Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor, Sooners YouTube Live. My name is Brandon Drum. I'm here with Parker Thune, Spencer Forsythe's on the board. And I know there's a lot to talk about. I know there's a lot of questions. We're going to get to all those because obviously there was a big podcast done by us this past week that seemed to catch the attention of everybody regarding Oklahoma Crimson and Cream Collective. And Parker, we haven't really dove in to our thoughts after that. We just kind of let it be and let it lie afterwards and let the fan base and everybody else just kind of kick their own narrative around. So I guess first and foremost, thank you guys for watching this with us. But what is your take from this, from what we heard and learned just a few days ago, as you know, Jason Belzer, the CEO of Student Athlete NIL and the Crimson and Cream Collective, spoke with us?
Well, there's a lot more to unpack there than we have time to do on the live stream this evening. Heck, I spent 2 hours engaging folks in that exact discussion today on the radio and still didn't feel like I covered the half of it. Travis Davidson and I had 4 hours of radio today. We spent at least half of it, if not longer, specifically on NIL and specifically related to that conversation we had with Jason. And it's a very nuanced, very intricate topic on which there are a zillion different opinions, and there are also a zillion different angles to approach it from, right? And so it's something that no doubt will be an ongoing conversation in all of its manifestations over the next few years until we get some semblance of order, which there just isn't a ton of right now in college football as it pertains to NIL. But I think what's important to take away from the podcast yesterday, for those that did have the opportunity to listen to it, is A, Oklahoma's got plenty of money and plenty of money that they're willing to spend. And B, your contribution, however small it may be, matters to the program, and it matters to the stability of the program's spending capacity, because, you know, I kind of use the analogy of diversifying your investments on the stock market, right? If you have a couple significant investments that you've sunk a great deal of money into, well, obviously they could boom, certainly, or they could bust and you could end up losing a lot of money, or you could end up making a lot of money. There's a lot of volatility there. And so it is when we consider NIL and how you go about funding that particular aspect of your football program, because you can rely on substantial contributions from a few big donors here and there. Obviously, Missouri is a great recent example, just got a $62 million gift to athletics. But that's not necessarily the most sustainable model, nor is it, well, and what it is, it's volatile, right? You might have $62 million this year, sure, but are you going to have a gift half that large or a tenth that large next year? Are you going to be able to count on that type of investment being made into your football program by somebody with the means to do so every single year? Obviously, the answer is no. And so there is strength and there is stability in having thousands and thousands of individuals committing a few dollars a month to NIL. I would say there is greater stability in that than relying on enormous donations, as luxurious as those may be, for a program that, you know, year to year is probably not going to be, regardless of which program you are, regardless of which program you're running, you're not going to be able to rely on those types of donations year in and year out, nor should you.
Yeah. So yesterday, when we started the podcast, they were at 424. It says 498 right now, but I can confirm that it is over 500, and I would assume by quite a bit. So the donor that has graciously said that they are going to match every 250 new members with $250,000 should be throwing in another $250,000 fairly soon into that pot. So good on you, OU fans, for stepping up. And as far as just what I felt like we learned, and I haven't really got to talk about it. So, I one, the Caden Green crap was hilariously interesting. Um,
It's very candid as far as that was
he
concerned.
was. He said they tampered. Like he did not hold back. And obviously the Missouri fans on Twitter took issue with it, obviously. I mean, we knew they would. Um, but one, I agree with you. They're not broke, right? Yeah, one, they're not broke. Two, $4 million. I thought that was the interesting part was, everybody had talked about 9 million, 9 million, 9 million, just kind of being where it's at. And it seems like that's where it's headed as far as Oklahoma's roster, because they plan to have a lot more money to be able to throw around once they get to the SEC, which in turn, I think you're going to see Oklahoma be a lot more aggressive with their money in the portal, not just high school, in the portal moving forward, which is music to OU fans' ears, right? Number three, I thought there was some, I don't want to call it miscommunication, but there was some misinterpreting of what he said when he said, we don't know how far it's going to go. Like, we know we're good for, the 2024 cycle. But unless the fans start chipping in more, there could be problems moving forward. And he said that, and he didn't really add on to it till later on in the podcast when he said, look, Oklahoma, the football is going to be fine. The issue is going to be is it's going to have to come from somewhere else, which means rowing's not going to get their due. Gymnastics is always going to get their due because gymnastics draws in a big crowd at the Lloyd Noble. But golf is going to be an issue moving forward. And that's awful because OU's golf program is awesome. Their tennis program, awesome. Wrestling used to be really good, has not been good for a while, but it looks to be moving in the right direction with Mark Henry's son, coming in to the program. So there's this NIL aspect that doesn't just affect the baseball, basketball, football, softball, gymnastics, right? It affects everything. And when you have donor fatigue, and that's essentially what he was getting at, donor fatigue. When that starts to happen, the donors are going to go, okay, I'm tired of chipping in for these Olympic sports. I'm going to chip in for the big six, and that's it. And then you have to start cutting sports. And unfortunately, when players, they kind of become, a product of their own demise, right? Across the board. The big sport players are fine, but the ones that wanted the equal rights and they were pounding their chest and all that, they're about to be thrown to the coals, man. Like if things don't start ironing out and moving in a direction to where there's some levity and some rules to this, right? Like that is the biggest issue. Is there's no rules. There's, as they call it, the wild wild west, and it's bad right now, like really bad. Parker, we could go on and on about stories. Like one of these days, we always say we're going to write a book. Like, folks, we really are going to write a book about this. And when it gets, you know, past time where we can say things down the road, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun book because there's some things that would just blow your mind. Like people took issue with the Lincoln Riley stuff, saying that Caleb Williams was going to walk up. That was true. Like Parker, you can confirm that was true. Like the take part was stupid. I think the misevaluation in taking Brock Vandergriff was bad, but I was in Orlando when that happened with Caleb Williams. and he got the offer on January 1st, 2020. He had visited Oklahoma like 3 times during the season on his own dime. And they swear up and down they were going to walk on. Now, I'll believe that when I see it. But the fact of the matter is that they didn't have a spot for him, which was just the craziest thing in the world. Anyways, I digress. But that was just part of the crazy stories. Mongo with a big C note, dude.
Thanks, Mongo. We appreciate
Dude, where have you been, man? By the way, haven't seen you in a while. Welcome back, and we appreciate you. Shout out to Ascension Carry On, Bobby Newcomb, Todd Arnold, and Jason Woolard. He always does a shout out to the parents of the players, obviously. Also, a special shout out to Greg Cure if he's listening. Well done. Well played.
He knows his audience.
Yes, he does.
Bongo knows his audience.
Well,
He
thank
knows
you,
which ones
Bongo.
to target.
Parker, will you ever wear a backwards hat?
Will I ever wear a backwards hat?
Do you wear a backwards hat? I don't think I ever see you wear a hat.
Yeah, that's the thing. I can't remember the last time I put a hat on, like an actual like baseball cap type. I guess it's probably the last time I played organized baseball. Would have been the last time I put a baseball cap on. I'll wear like a winter hat when it's cold outside, but no, don't expect to see me in a backwards
You're
hat.
talking about a beanie, right?
Yeah, a beanie.
You call it a winter hat? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, okay. Tomato, tomato. But by the way, before we go any further, want to remind you all, this OU Insider live stream is brought to you by Manscaped. It's time for the ultimate face-off. The Beard Bowl is here as the two best teams square off to see who the champion of facial fuzz is. Our friends at Manscaped are prepping everything you need for game day. Manscaped's Beard Hedger Pro Kit is the MVP of facial grooming, offering precision trimming, water-resistant technology, and enough styling options to outplay any opponent. The Beard Hedger cordless trimmer packs one guard with 20 different lengths. That's right. No more messy drawers full of guards. But wait, there's more. Water resistant as well. Run under the sink, shave in the shower for easy cleanups. It's time to move the sticks from your old beard razor. Look and feel ready for the big game every day with Manscaped's beard formulations, including beard balm, beard oil, shampoo, and conditioner. And lastly, as a bonus, Manscaped has thrown in a beard accessory pack, including a beard brush, beard comb, and beard scissors for the finishing touches every modern bearded gentleman deserves. That playoff beard has never looked better. Trust Manscaped to get the job done. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code OU Insider at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com with the code OU Insider.
Cromine One says you're more of a fedora guy, and I actually laugh because I could see you wearing a fedora.
Oh no, absolutely no way. I don't think I'm not gangster enough to wear a fedora. I feel like you got to be a little bit gangster to rock a fedora, at least to rock it the right way.
Yep. EBO says the pussyfooting around NIL was getting old. We don't need absolute specifics, but knowing 5 times more above the market value was a relief to hear. Confirmed. More of that, please.
Yeah, the transparency, I think, for many people was very refreshing. It's very refreshing for somebody involved, heavily involved in the process, not just at Oklahoma, but with 30 plus other collectives nationwide, to go on the record and say, hey, this happened, and here's how it went down, and here's what the numbers were, and this is reality in college football, because it is.
It is. It's reality. I mean, there's the issues that are moving forward, I think, and they're going to try to correct. I think you see Josh Pate talk about it on his, his lives and his podcasts, where he says like there's more. He talked about the Big 12 and the SEC going to bed together, essentially, which we never really talked about, and that was a big deal last Friday. I'm still trying to grasp what that means moving forward,
I'm not
because
convinced it means much of anything.
no, I disagree. I disagree. I wholeheartedly disagree.
I
I
I I think
they're
what it
going they're going
signals.
no, dude. At some point in time, those two and probably the ACC, I would assume, if they can get their act together, and or the ACC and the Big 12 combining one of the two, and you have a three conference, and then you have a bunch of independents out there, I would assume that are big name programs that just don't want to enter a conference a la Notre Dame. I think they're going to gang up on the NCAA and say, outside of naming the or running the title, move the hell out of our way.
Yeah,
We
no,
are
that's
going
what
to
it's
have a
going to be. Like,
commissioner.
to me, what it signals is what we've kind of come to understand and realized for quite some time, which is that we're moving towards a college football that is dominated and, in fact, managed by the SEC and the Big Ten. The SEC and the Big Ten are going to run college football. Now, the NCAA will not. That day is coming where the SEC and the Big Ten will continue to force the hands of the other power conferences and the other major college football institutions such that we have consolidation to the point where you have what is
Two
akin
conferences.
to, yeah, the AFC and the NFC and the NFL, but it's going to be the SEC. And I would imagine the Big Ten would have to get a new name at that point, right? Because it'll be like the Big 30 at that point.
Yeah. Okay. So, what does that say about Oklahoma and Texas, by the way, that they saw this coming from a long ways away, like a long ways away, that they were like, you know what? Bye, Big 12. We're out. Like, we're not going to be left with our pants around our ankles. And
Well,
you got to give props
that's
to
really
Joe
what
C to
kicked
that.
it all off,
Yeah.
isn't it? Like,
Kind of.
if we trace back the origin of mass realignment in college football and such preposterous things as Cal and Stanford joining the ACC, then what we trace it back to, Brandon, is OU and Texas leaving the Big 12 for the SEC. Like, that is what caused so many other programs to reevaluate their financial situations
Yeah.
and say, okay, maybe we could do better. And then
Yeah.
the next step in the process, or I guess the next shoe to drop, was USC and UCLA in the
Yeah.
summer of 2022. And after that, it was on like Donkey Kong, man.
Yeah, Pac-12 just got freaking ate alive, which we saw coming for years, right?
Oh,
Like
sure.
they tried to be aggressive and going out and getting Oklahoma and Texas, but it just never could work out because unfortunately Texas Tech was like trying to drag along and Oklahoma State, and no offense, but yin and yang here, man. Like they're not on the same level of athletic departments. And I know Oklahoma
Yeah, well,
State wants
that's
to.
probably not the analogy you want to be making, because yin and yang, those are on the
Okay,
same.
yin and yang. I guess that's true. I was yin and yang would be a bad term. It's oil and water. How about that? There you go. They don't mix. Is my point. Is one is clean and clean as in like one is way up here, pure as far as how they view themselves, Oklahoma and Texas, and the other one is kind of the run of the muck. We're gonna win all the Olympic sports and then pound our chests about how badass we are at that, and not have
Wow.
any money, and not have any money while
Brandon
doing it.
bought he brought the poke hatred tonight.
I was just across the board at anybody that wants to do that crap, and I'm sure our fans like that. Um, I thought there was an interesting comment up here earlier. Um, oh, somebody said Parker is more of a monocle guy.
Um,
Oh man. So, all right. So offers have been rolling out. We need to talk about that. By
yeah,
the way,
about that.
let's dive in here, man. There's been a few offers out tonight. I think the most interesting one had to be Darion Coleman, right?
Yeah, I feel pretty strongly that could
Agreed.
end up being your quarterback in the 2026 class?
Okay. So about that, don't expect Oklahoma to take anybody. And I just spoke to a source tonight about this. Don't expect them to take anybody until one, they visit, which he's going to here in the near future. You got that on OU Insider. And two, they throw in front of not just Seth Luttrell again, but in front of the offensive staff as a whole, because that's how Oklahoma does it. So you would expect Darion Coleman to be a camper here in June at some point. And then I would not be shocked if they said, come on down. You're the next contestant of the 2026 class. And, you know, I look, they also offered Grubbs out of Florida today. Ironically, they both had the same trainer. So that was interesting. The one thing I do know that from talking to people about Coleman, specifically around the Switzer Center tonight, was that his arm, his athleticism, there was a comparison made tonight. Who do you think it was as far as what he is as a player? Just how he freelances quite a bit.
Arm and athlete. Well, you say freelance. I think Caleb Williams.
There you go.
Wow. Okay.
No, they weren't saying like he's the next.
Well, sure. Yeah.
They just said
stylistically,
it's just stylistically it was very much Caleb Williams in their mind.
Here's what is worth knowing about Darion Coleman. And again,
I was waiting for you to do that. I was letting you take the board on that one. So
feel very, very strongly that this could be Oklahoma's guy in the 2026 class. Here is what is worth knowing about Darion Coleman. Many will recall that in late summer, I want to say it was July, right before they offered Brendan Zurbrugg, when Oklahoma was first starting to scour the market for a second quarterback, one of the guys that they went after was an Elite 11 finalist. I believe the only Elite 11 finalist at that point that was still uncommitted, fellow by the name of Trevor Jackson from down in Orlando. He ended up committing to Ole Miss and was a 4-star player.
Reclassified, right?
Didn't reclassify. No, he was
He
always.
Didn't end up doing it.
Okay. No. He was always a 2024 cat. But he ended up committing to Ole Miss, I believe, in September, over OU and several others. And Trevor Jackson was, his stock soared after the Elite 11. He already had several Power 5 offers, already had schools that were interested in him. And after the Elite 11, though, that's really when the heavy hitters started to get involved, one of which was Oklahoma. So what's my point in explaining all of this to you? Well, my point is to explain the fact that Trevor Jackson is not a scrub. And Darion Coleman at Jones High School down in Orlando walked in as a sophomore and beat out Trevor Jackson for the starting quarterback job, to the point where Trevor Jackson ended up parting ways with Ole Miss, or should I say Ole Miss ended up parting ways with Trevor Jackson. And because he couldn't even start for his own high school team as a senior, he ended up walking on at Florida State, taking a PWO opportunity, NIL incentivized naturally, but ended up taking a PWO at Florida State because this young sophomore, string bean sophomore named Darion Coleman, beat him out for the starting job. And so that's some background for the type of player that Darion Coleman is, and just how sharp he is, even as a sophomore, rising junior, I suppose, at this point. But as young as he is, as undeveloped as he is physically, man, there is a lot of talent there, a lot of arm talent, most specifically. And talking to a couple people tonight down on the scene in Florida, they're really, really impressed with what he brings to the table and what he has the potential to be 2 years down the road when he's ready to enroll on a college campus and he's had the opportunity to tack on some more weight, and refine some of the aspects of his game that are still a little bit raw, there's a lot to like about Darion Coleman.
Yeah, I like him a lot. As you said, OU was kind of the school he started liking, I think, as a 12-year-old, if I remember correctly. And from that point on, it was the offer he had been waiting on, more or less.
And to kind of flesh that out a little bit more, when I got to talking to Darion Coleman, he called OU his dream school, which,
Yeah,
okay,
that
like you
the
hear that
OU
quite a
fans
bit.
see that as a
Yeah.
killer. They're like, yeah,
Yeah, they do.
who's the
And they
other
do.
guy they offered? That's who we're gonna
And
end
so
up
like
on.
I'm a little bit jaded. I'm a little bit cynical. I hear something like that. I'm like, okay, realistically, how much does that mean? And so I asked him, like, can you expound a little bit on that? Like, why is OU your quote unquote dream school? And he told me because they're the quarterback school. They send quarterbacks to the league. I know if I go to Oklahoma, I'm gonna get to the league. And so
Yeah.
that right there, that tells you that the kid, he's thinking through this with his head as opposed to his heart. There's not some arbitrary emotional connection to the University of Oklahoma, which ultimately, in the end, rarely means anything in the recruiting
Mm-hmm.
game. No, he sees Oklahoma for what it is and what it has been in his lifetime, which is a quarterback factory, a school that every single year, no matter who it is, has a top of the line starter that is among the best at his position in all of college football, and that ends up getting drafted into the NFL,
Yep.
usually in the high rounds.
Yep. No, I'm with you on that. The the other thing I saw in the chat, and it was asked multiple times, was and I know you don't care about this, but I will. Um, the EA Sports game, people keep asking, and JE, I'm going to get you in 2 seconds. People keep asking about the EA Sports college football game. When's it going to be released? Mark your calendars for June 15th or 18th. Or, excuse me, June 15th or 17th, or June 22nd, or 24th. And the
That's a
reason I
lot of
say
dates.
there's 4 dates, and they haven't come out specifically for it, but college football notoriously always dropped on the second or third week of July back in the day. And the games always drop, and DVDs always drop on Tuesdays or Thursdays. So that is why I say those 2 dates. They haven't really spit out the exact date right now. JE, $5. Appreciate you for the super chat. Give me our NIL budget and we will win 20 natties in 2 years. I am the greatest long snapper of all time. They're the Freeman kid's pretty good. I see he's going to be a long snapper at the University of Oklahoma, and yes, that's Gavin Freeman's brother. So reserve judgment there. Dwayne
Wait,
Pryor.
that's Gavin Freeman's brother?
I thought, is that not Gavin Freeman's brother from?
No, 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 no,
Am I
no,
missing here?
no. Xavier Freeman, that's Gavin's younger brother. He's got
Yeah,
a
I
few
saw him
shows
doing
on
long
Oklahoma.
snapping. I saw him practicing long snap. Am I? Is that? Did I
It's
not see it on Twitter?
Seth Freeman
Is that
is,
who I keep seeing?
yes.
Oh
Seth
my
Freeman. He
God. Why
goes
do I
he
keep
goes to
thinking it was
Moore High
Xavier? Every
School.
time I was watching, I was like, oh, wow, I didn't know he was a long snapper. Like, I would just keep scrolling because I don't pay much attention to long snapping, to be honest. I'm being truthful. Like, I see that and I keep scrolling. I just saw Freeman and it looked like him. So I just kept on going. And I thought it was weird because I knew he was a defensive lineman. I was like, he didn't long snap last I heard. Maybe he wanted to in college. I don't know. Dwayne Pryor. I'm just now getting on here, so I'm sure if y'all talked about Jonah Williams, we have not actually. What are the chances we land him? Sorry if y'all have already talked about him. Um, I like Oklahoma's chances. By the way, first, thank you, Dwayne, for the super chat. I like Dwayne. I do like Dwayne because he gave a super chat. I like OU's chances with Jonah Williams. Um, so I'm trying to word this delicately. Parker's like, oh, I'm waiting on this. So there's a reason why we didn't put in crystal balls publicly. One, we were asked not to. And the tweet you saw was the reason why we were asked not to. So what might have been something that happened sooner rather than later seems to be more on the later side right now. Yeah, it could totally change, honestly. Like, things could. He's still talking with Oklahoma every day. He's still talking to the baseball program every day. I spoke to sources both places, and yes, still happening. And he still likes Oklahoma. Oklahoma's still his favorite. It felt like what happened is he got home. He was feeling really good about Oklahoma to the point that there could have been a decision coming up in the near future, and things started to leak and leak very heavily. And people around him started saying, well, hold on. It's only January. It's only February. Hold off a little bit. Let's take our time. And it just kind of went from being a win to now not so much an if, because I don't think it's an if. I think he's a Sooner at some point in time down the road. But it's just going to be drug out. Like, he's going to take visits now, like, and that may or may not have happened. And look, there's nobody to blame in this. I think that's something that needs to be put forth here, because
come on, drop the hammer on Inside Texas, Brandon.
They started the whole thing, and there is a there conspiracy theorist in me that feels like that was on purpose. Because Texas wasn't even, we weren't in play really. They even kind of waved the white flag a little bit there, and felt like they weren't going to get him. I still to this day I feel like it's OU A&M. Yeah, I think the other program you could probably watch for a little bit later on would be LSU. And my reasoning is baseball. Like, when you look at some of these other programs like Ohio State, baseball, come on now. You look at Oregon, I don't really see them in the same level as OU, LSU, Texas A&M. Like, they're just not when it comes to baseball, particularly all-time baseball, and particularly what OU baseball has been in the recent history, right? Like, they just played in the national title in 2021. So that is, or was it 22 that they did? It was 20. Was it 21 or 20? It was 21, right? Yeah, 21. So, they should be really, really good this year, which is going to help Oklahoma significantly with Jonah Williams. They still have Willett as one of the best assistant coaches in all of college baseball. The dude could be a major league manager if he wanted to, and he's chilling as an assistant coach in college and loving it. And if you're Jonah Williams, playing for that guy makes all the sense in the world, right? When you add him to what Skip Johnson already provides in that staff, and you add to what Oklahoma does on the defensive side of the ball and their development, it makes complete sense to him. And I get it. The kid grew up a big Oklahoma fan. The very first time I saw Jonah Williams, I was the first person to get a photo of him, because nobody really knew who he was when Parker and I went down to that camp in San Antonio. And remember, his trainer walked up and said, you need to go take a photo of this guy. The dude's out there wearing an OU towel and an OU gloves. And I'm looking at him going, that is a big dude. So I walked over and said, I want to take a photo of you. And he had the gloves on and everything. And the rest is history. I think Oklahoma offered him 12, 18, 24 hours later. And that became a thing. So it's far from over. OU leads. Just, it could have been ending.
Could have been a lot easier.
Could have been a lot easier. Could have been a lot easier. It's a lot simpler. So, but kids, and I know fans are gonna be like, well, it probably wasn't all in if that's gonna do it. Well, some of
Not how
these
it
kids
works.
really, some of these kids take it, they don't like people ruining their moment. Like they take it personal because they've worked their whole lives for it. So I get it. And it's the era caution is always something that we've always done. So um that is a prime example why. But the only one you can really blame is the Inside Texas on this for starting the whole domino effect that went on. But it is what it is. They were doing their job, and it ended up biting OU in the butt. Ironically, that a rival school's site is the thing that kicked OU in the tail.
How about James Stymack throwing in $2 there via the super chat? Over under 4 top offensive linemen Beatonbow lands in the 2025 class, Brandon. And I guess it depends on what you categorize as top, right? Are we talking blue chip guys? Because I'll be straight with you. Ryan Foje, already a blue chip guy. He's received a 4-star ranking from Rivals as of today. So blue chipper there. I think Owen Hollenbeck is a blue chipper by the end of the cycle, and probably much sooner. That kid's a menace. So yes, there's another one. And I think, like, are they going to get both Michael Fasusi and Lamont Rogers? Probably not. Like that is a tall task.
It's a tall
This is
task, but somebody I talked to tonight was pretty confident. So
if they can pull that, I mean, like this would be the year to capitalize on what Beatonbow has been able to do as far as NFL talent production the last couple of years with Anton Harrison and Tyler Guyton, in all likelihood becoming back-to-back first-round draft picks. So this is the juncture at which you capitalize. And I think for Oklahoma, what that means is one of the two, Fasusi or Rogers. If you can get both, oh boy, you're talking about maybe the top offensive line haul in the nation already at that point. Whether you add a 5th later on or not, like Fasusi, Rogers, Hollenbeck, Ryan Foje. Find me another foursome in the nation at any particular school by the end of the cycle that holds a candle to those 4. I doubt you will be able to.
Okay, so you got Fasusi, Rogers. Who else did you name?
Hollenbeck and Foje.
Yeah, Foje. Yeah. Who were the 4 that you named originally? I was trying to ban somebody on here.
Who's the 4 that I named? What do you mean originally?
The O lineman originally, like you said.
Yeah, it was those 4. Like,
okay.
And obviously, Foje has a teammate, Jonte Newman, that is a target for Oklahoma. Ty Haywood is in the picture. Andrew Babalola is in the picture. Like, there are options. There are plenty of options.
I think there's a world they take 5, which would mean here's what that would mean is, let's say March 9th, Amarian Robinson showed up and he just committed to Oklahoma, like just hypothetically. And Jonah Williams is still on the board. Fans, this is going to make you pull your hair out, but the safety room is so good right now that the numbers could be an issue. Now,
for Jonah Williams,
no, that's what I was going for right here. Now, you say that, and OU makes room for everybody here as of late. They're going to make room for Jonah Williams. What they would end up doing is they would end up taking from linebacker, or they would take from corner, or something of that extent, because you're always going to have the safety room is so they're already 2 or 3 over as it is. You see what I'm saying? Like that's therein lies the issue. So let's say that and it was a hypothetical.
What you're telling me is Brandon Hall is too good at his job.
He's damn good at his job. That's the thing, is like he's so good that he's got too much right now. So there's a after spring. That's something we need to talk about. Is after spring is going to be the most interesting thing to see who enters the portal from Oklahoma, because everybody that's there right now is who they want there, who they want. Like they're going to have to make some really, really hard choices. like unbelievably hard choices. So, and folks, you always take Jonah Williams. I make that clear. Like they're going to make room for Jonah Williams, but it's going to be because somebody else got put on the chopping block. Unfortunately, well, if you're getting paid, that's what happens. That is the real world in a nutshell, right there. If somebody that they feel might end up being better than you comes in and you haven't been producing after 2 and 3 years, Alabama won 6 national titles in a freaking 15-year span, processing the hell out of people, dude. You don't produce by the time you're a junior, bye. And they would always sign like 30 dudes, remember? Like they would oversign and then cut. Oversign and cut. Send people to transfer out. But back then they had to sit out a year. There wasn't a portal. So like they were ruthless about it. But he ran it like an NFL team. And as we were just told by Jason Belser, this past podcast, they run it like a front office. If you're not producing, you're gone. That's the world. That's the way it works now. It sucks for these kids, right? But it is what it is. You can have the best culture in the world, but if you're not producing and they can bring somebody in to add to the culture and add on the field, they're going to do that. You're just going to have to go. So I want to ask you, do the coaches are all out on vacation this week, right? Dead period. They're all gone.
Sure.
Commitment happen? Will another commitment happen? Will a surprise commitment happen again?
When? Like what's the timetable?
In the next before March 1st.
I'm saying no. I'll set the expectations low. If they get one by March 1st, then everybody is over the moon. But I'm gonna say no. Say the rest of the month, it's all quiet on the Western Front.
Yeah. Dwayne Pryor coming in big again with another $20. Thank you, man. I do like you a lot, bro. You're the man. Um, who is going to be? I think you meant who is going to be our kicker next year? Talking about Oklahoma. Is it going to be Liam Evans?
I mean, I want to say
Or does
Liam
Zach
Evans.
Schmidt?
I
Does the
I
curse
want to
of
say
Zach
Liam
Schmidt
Evans,
still
but
reign on
like,
OU fans?
ugh, I don't know, man. Like, do you have confidence trotting out a true freshman next year? I know I would, but I know far less about football than Brent Venables does. So maybe that's just me speaking out of blissful ignorance.
Yeah,
But
fair.
I don't see how you can evaluate the way that Zach Schmidt kicked the ball last year and not conclude that there is an upgrade plausible. Like there's an upgrade to be made in that department, and that the upgrade can be made with what you have available. And right now for Oklahoma, that is Liam Evans, and then of course the Florida State transfer Tyler Keltner.
Yeah.
If it's Schmidt kicking again, I have my questions at that point.
There's some really, really big problems. If he's still kicker, um, that means Liam Evans is not living up to his billing as one of the top kickers in the country. And the Florida State kid, it's Keller, right?
Keltner.
Keltner. I always said Keller. Keltner.
Yeah, well, we'll
But
be
he
asking.
hasn't really produced a ton in college to begin with.
No, he was like a 76% guy at Eastern Tennessee or East Tennessee State, I guess.
Which,
But
ironically, was around which Schmidt was at Oklahoma.
so basically, as if one Zach Schmidt wasn't enough,
Yeah.
you brought in 2 Zach Schmitz. He decided, yep, give me another one of those. So I mean, we'll all be asking the same question if Schmidt is the kicker next year, right, Brandon? It'll be, man, how bad do those other guys suck on the practice field?
Oh, well,
The shank against BYU was it for me. I think it was 27 that he missed from. It was at that
yes.
point that I was like, okay, like this is over. This has to be over.
So Nunez added another Schmidt and then he dipped out. He's like, peace, I'm out. This guy's gonna get me where I'm not gonna be able to take another job. All right, just joking. We love you, Schmidt. Oh, by the way, Mongo, stop being offended, man. Stop being offended. We love you, man. We appreciate you. We love you, bro. Um, there was another really good. Oh, who was it? It was State. State 5 stinks. Hey, we talked about March 1st potential, commit, whatever. I kind of agree with you. I don't think there'll be another one, but I do think there'll be one before April 1st. I think there'll be multiple before April 1st, to be honest with you. That junior day on March 9th, and then the preceding practices and the following practices for spring and the players visiting during those times and the scrimmages. I just think there's not enough spots for Oklahoma to not get a commitment or two. And Oklahoma gets to this time around, instead of only having 4 or 5 commits, they get to be aggressive and say, if you don't commit now, come June, you probably won't have that spot because we got a bunch of people come in on official visits. Yours is after, whatever. I mean, it's just hypothetical, obviously. But I just think that there's the ability to really push that narrative and push the fact that they're only taking 23 and they've already got 10 commits. There's only 13 spots available left in high school recruiting. You now are at the players now don't have, and the recruits don't have the leverage. OU actually has a leverage at this point. Because if you want to be a Sooner, you're going to hop on sooner rather than later. Pun intended.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. And, it makes me wonder because I know you're obviously holding the door open for Jonah Williams as long as
Yeah.
he needs or wants it open, right? But like, you not only think about Amarian Robinson, but Marcus Wimberly, too. 2 guys out of the state of Arkansas that are both outstanding safeties,
And
both
love
recent
Oklahoma.
visitors at Oklahoma, and both absolutely love it.
And
And
both returning. One on March 9th, the other one on April 9th.
and they're not both ending up in the class, right?
Right.
Like, that's just how it is. That's
Yeah.
how the cookie crumbles. That's the nature of the beast. You have 2 safety spots. And if you are indeed going to hold the door open for Jonah Williams and you're confident he's coming, you're only getting one of those dudes.
Yep. It's going to be interesting. I was asked, I'm gonna read the question verbatim because I don't want to get it wrong here. So the question, and I have this mailbag I'm answering, and okay, so I'm gonna read the questions to you guys, and I'm not gonna answer all of them on here because I got the mailbag questions. It's on OU Insider. These are really good questions, and I've got about 7 or 8 more I'm gonna do and post tonight, or tomorrow morning. Have it up for you guys by noon. One of the first one was they wanted all the information on Lewis Carter, which we've talked about a ton on what he's doing this offseason. Another one was what are the improvements OU must achieve this spring and over the summer to have a chance at winning the SEC and making the playoffs? This was the longest answer I've ever had in my life, Parker. And then what freshmen to sophomore or sophomore to juniors do you see making a big jump? And I talked a lot about that. But the question that I thought was most interesting, and I just skipped a few, is if you could have 3 wishes and guarantee any recruits for the 2025 class that OU is targeting, who would they be and why?
Oh, that's the easy. Like, I I already have it. Like, how long did it take you to come up with your answer?
Oh, it was easy, but I want to hear your answer.
Okay. Michael Fasusi, because I
Okay,
think
no,
that's a future first round draft pick.
that's one of mine. Yep,
Jonah Williams, for
that was
obvious
the other
reasons,
one. Yep.
and Lincoln Cure.
See, I didn't name Lincoln. I said Trent Wilson.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Elaborate.
And that's why I brought that question up, because I knew that we were going to differ on that one. So you always have to have good interior defensive linemen. He is a top 250 defensive lineman right now. Obviously, Oklahoma is in on several other really good defensive linemen, right? Like Landon Rink, to name one, but he's a Texas X, right? Like legacy. So I kind of throw him. Trust me, I get Oklahoma has a chance. I understand it. The dude's going to take an official visit. OU's the only one he's got an official setup for right now. I get all of that. That said, Trent Williams is visiting on March 9th.
Trent Wilson.
Trent Wilson, excuse me. I keep saying Trent
Gosh,
Williams.
if Trent Williams were
Yeah, I keep saying that because freaking the
eligibility.
Super Bowl's on my mind. Trent Wilson. Trent Wilson, 4-star defensive lineman out of the DMV. And that's the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, or Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, however you want to call it. I used to live out there. So he's coming in on March 9th. He's going to be a guy that's going to skyrocket up in the rankings. We both know it. He's probably going to be a top 100, top 75 type kid when it's all said and done.
Even if he doesn't, right? That's already
He's
the
an
number
elite
11
defensive lineman
tackle in the nation.
Right. He's an elite defensive lineman in a class that does not have a ton of elite defensive linemen. And that is why I have him so high up, because you've got to continue adding pieces to the interior of the defensive line. I totally get that Lincoln Cure would be the best possible scenario for Oklahoma at tight end. That dude is Mark Andrews reincarnated. I get it. I agree. But if I have to name three, I'm going to go to the positions that they don't already have solidified, and that are three of the biggest positions in all of football. And that's safety, offensive line, defensive line. Without fail, I'm going there every time. You have to have elite guys at those three spots.
So then, okay, like
quarterback, we all know quarterback, but those are the other spots.
It begs the question, though. Like, if that's the route you're going to go, I feel obligated to ask this question. You legitimately feel like safety is more of a need than tight end?
Jonah, you don't pass on Jonah Williams. The dude can play cheetah. He can play safety. He can play linebacker. You don't pass on that guy.
No, I agree. But at that point, it's not necessarily like, it's not just about need, right? It's about the caliber of athlete that you are getting and what he can be within the scheme, which is what makes Jonah Williams so alluring to every single coaching staff, but especially to Oklahomans, right? With the way that they
on offense, Lincoln Cure. I mean, I could totally understand. Like if you had me say what are the four, Lincoln Cure would have been my fourth one, without question. But that's not what was offered to me. I had three. So you guys got a piece of what you get on OU Insider and why. And I actually dive into their recruitments too. So like where they stand. Plus I named the next six commits, 3 on offense, 3 on defense, that I think is going to happen, and where OU stands with those 6 players. And I added 2 extra. I added in 7th and 8th just for kicks and giggles because I was trying to be a nice guy. So that is all on OU Insider VIP, by the way. All right. Lastly, before we go here, basketball. Big win. They beat BYU, number 21 team in the country. Obviously, Oklahoma's out of the top 25, but I think they play Oklahoma State this weekend, correct? At home.
They beat Oklahoma State this weekend on their home floor.
They're back in the top 25. Exactly. And they're back being a 4, 5, 6 seed. I think they're probably 6 seed right now. I think they're back to being a 5 seed if they can win that, because now you're looking at 18 wins. You're probably going to be in the 20-win territory when the season's over. And when's the last time Oklahoma won 20 games, to be honest? Like, when was it? I can't even remember that, right? Did they win 20 last year?
They won 20.
I think it was first year, right, with Moser? Did they
I
not?
think Moser's first year, they didn't quite. I think they got 19
They got
in
19. That's
Porter's
right. That's
first
right. They
year.
were. That's right.
It would have been Kruger's final season. Was the last year they won 20 games.
I still, man, if they could have just kept Austin and all those guys intact with Moser, I still think they would have made a run. But ifs, ands, or buts, right? Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Um, yeah. Before we leave, I think we have to, man. We got to pay respects to one of the greatest musicians of all time. I'm not a big country music guy,
Nor am I.
but this guy, when you look at his accolades and when you look at what he did for the military as a vet, mad respect for him. Um, you look at just what he did just for the normal Joe walking the streets across the country, across the world. You hear the story of he's going to get he's got a ceremony for the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, and instead of going to that and showing up late to it, mind you, he coaches his kids' championship game, and they went to like multiple overtimes, and like that's just who he was. Like when we're talking about Toby Keith, obviously, like I RIP to one of the best and arguably the biggest Sooner fan walking the face of the earth. An awesome human being that anybody that ever came across to him was super nice. We bump into him all the time on the sidelines, and he was just the nicest guy. And one of the coolest things I could ever have said to me was that he was fans of not only OU Insider, KREF, all of that. Like, and he would tell you about it. And I thought that was just the coolest thing ever. So, rip, RIP to Toby Keith, man. He's going to be sorely, sorely missed. Sorely missed.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's a guy that, despite the fact that he was not an alumnus, he
Yeah.
did an incredible amount for the University of Oklahoma. Obviously, philanthropy is one
Yeah.
thing, right? But to simply be present as much as he was at OU sporting events speaks volumes, right? Because it's easy. It is exceedingly easy for somebody with that much money to simply write a check every now and again. But to make the expenditure of time and energy, especially in the latter years of his life when he was actively battling cancer,
Mm-hmm.
uh, to make that expenditure of time and energy to be present at so many OU athletic events speaks volumes for how invested Toby Keith was in the vitality and the livelihood of OU athletics and the atmosphere and the environment on game days, regardless of what the sport was, right? Like, obviously, he'd be on the sideline at football games, but he'd be courtside at basketball games. He'd be out at softball. He'd be at gymnastics meets. The guy was everywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
he was easily, without question, I would say undeniably the most prominent Oklahoma fan in the world. I don't think that's hyperbolic. And again, I mean, when you, I remember moving down to Oklahoma 7 years ago and driving past the water tower and more, and goodness gracious, like a town this or a city the size of Moore has Toby Keith's name on the water tower, right? He's not dead. This is still a guy who's living, like actively putting out albums. Like, for his name, as a living human being, for his name to be on the water tower in a city the size of Moore, he must mean something to this state and to this community. And obviously, over the next several years, I learned and experienced firsthand how much he did mean to all the people of the state of Oklahoma. And I think that's the coolest thing about Toby Keith's life to the people of this state is not only was he the ultimate patriot in so many ways, but he was the ultimate Oklahoman, and he
Yeah.
represented the state of Oklahoma unashamedly and unambiguously in everything he did. And he was the ideal representative of the state.
He also had a broken leg. I see people talking about it. I actually just told my wife and kids that story. Yeah, I believe it was in the 90s, early 90s, late 80s that he suited up. And I want to say I was at that red white game because
It
my
was
parents always,
1994.
okay, I was there. So yeah, my parents always took me there and it was on the turf and dude broke his leg. Yeah, it's funny now. Like it's funny. Like, but they no, it's funny. But he got the suit up for Oklahoma, so I thought that was really cool. He he just is an icon. I don't
Yeah.
think there's any other way to put it. Like an iconic human being and an iconic artist that just stinks. And he did find Taylor Swift, as was noted in the chat, and that you know what hasn't even said a word about him yet, and he created her, so she's on my hit list. So I I I I
You're
no
about to
I
have
took
Swifties all up in
yeah
your
she
mentions,
well
Brandon.
here
Not a battle you want to
here's the
pick.
thing, not so much on my hit list. I just didn't want to say the full. She's on my crap list. How about that?
Okay,
That
sure.
I was taking the S out of there for everybody. So, um, yeah, I she pissed me off. Like, how do you not do that, man? How do you not come out and talk about the guy that moved your family to Nashville and set you up and got your first few albums out? Like, that's just BS, dude. BS. You owe everything to that guy, and you've done nothing. So, par for the course. Anyways, yeah, that's gonna do it, man. For this version of the OU Insider under the Visor YouTube Live. If you're not subscribed to this channel, subscribe. Also, go to OU Insider, subscribe, $9.95. Get you a whole month, and you can do $9.95 a month, or you can get a whole year, $99.95, which is what most people do because it saves you like $30. So it's worth it in the end. Number one, number two, like we talked about, like the chats, the mailbags, the insider news. Like Parker just dropped a really cool nugget on the 2026 offer, Darian Coleman, and I've got notes coming on several visitors this past weekend. Not only tomorrow will be my mailbags, and then I'm going to drop multiple mailbag part one, part two over the next few days. And I'm also going to drop some notes coming up as well. So, and we've got team notes that were just laced with awesome team notes that everybody loved. That was on there. Crimson and Cream Collective, Jason Belser and those guys are on there answering questions on OU Insider. So that is the type of content you get on OU Insider. It's all inclusive: basketball, football, baseball, softball, recruiting, everything that is Oklahoma. We've got you, OUinsider.com. All right. For Parker Thune, for Spencer Forsythe, my name is Brendan Drum. You guys have a blessed night.